Hey there, Travis Stockton. I put out a video a while back on how to use OneNote and Logos in conjunction with each other to study the Bible. Since I posted that video, I've had a handful of people reach out to me asking for a copy of my template. I posted that on a page on my blog, but the headings may not be all that clear, so I wanted to go ahead and include a quick video of me going over that template. And I'm going to go ahead and use a passage I've already studied, Galatians 3:15 through 22, so that you can kind of get an idea of what I'm doing in that template. In that template, I have a section header for each of the different translations that I like to go to reference as far as scripture is concerned. I use ESV primarily with my family, and then I use the NASB, NIV, and NLT as kind of reference points for the different translation methodologies. So ESV is a little bit closer to the word for word, and obviously the NLT is a little closer to the thought for thought. And so it gives me a good spectrum of translations. So then I usually will copy in the Greek, and then I go back and I do the ESV again. So the reason I have ESV reader up here and then the ESV here is so that my final read through the passage has the verse references. The first time I read it, I don't want the verse references in there just so that I can have a easier read through, and I don't have someone influencing the flow of the passage as much. So then after I've gone through it the 4 times and then started to think through the passage, I'll also spend some time in prayer. Then I'll go through and make notes and listen to the passage, just trying to get a better understanding of the basic facts of the passage. And my New Testament professor in my undergraduate basically said that you should at least make 30 observations for each passage you're studying. Here, the discontinuities and the continuities. The discontinuities are parts of a passage from the author's or the original audience's perspective that are different than my current context or the context of the audience that I would be trying to share this passage with. And then the continuities are those things that are similar to the original author's or audience's context, the culture, the intent, the purpose of the letter, all of that, and how it applies to our current context or the context of the audience that I would be trying to share the passage with. And then there's a series of questions that I try to answer for each passage. Each of those questions are listed in the template, so I'm not going to go through those in depth or anything, but you can read through those and they're pretty self-explanatory. Then I try to use a quick, like, 1-sentence summary of the passage so that I have a reference point for what the passage is about and to try to condense it as much as I can. The subject and complement, those are what question. The subject is what's the question that the passage is trying to answer, and then the complement is the answer to that question. So it takes the passage into a different perspective of not reading, all these declarative statements or interrogatives. And so then the subject and the complement. The subject is basically the question that the passage is trying to answer, and then the complement is the answer to that question. This gives you a way of looking at the passage from a different perspective and helps you to kind of think through the passage a little bit more. The purpose is more of what the author was intending the passage to do. The emotional hook, obviously, is just another way of thinking about the emotions behind the passage. When you are trying to share a passage or study a passage, understanding the emotions behind it, if you're going to preach on a passage, it's helpful to think about what the original author's emotions were in writing the passage. Personal application, this is my kind of knee-jerk reaction to the passage. What are some things I'm thinking through or wrestling with in this passage? And then fallen condition and gospel application. These are kind of an important part of what I do when I study a passage. If nothing else, this is probably one of the more important parts to me personally. And so I look at the fallen condition. What's the fallen condition that's true of the original audience or author? And what's the gospel application from the original audience or author? And then how does that apply to me or to the audience that I would be sharing the passage with? The tangible applications, these are literal applications that I would try to apply to other people's lives or that are more general. They're not as specific to me personally. And I try to break that down into 3 categories: think, believe, feel, and then do. This takes it from a head perspective, an emotional perspective, and then an action-oriented response. Then I try to start thinking about it from a perspective of how would I share this? I give it a message title, I have a place for all my commentary notes, and then that's the gist of what I do with a New Testament passage. The Old Testament passage isn't much different. I actually use the same template for New Testament and Old Testament. Something that I haven't added to this yet that I'd like to is the literary type. I don't have that included in my template, but that's something that I'd like to start adding to the passages that I'm studying so that I have a better framework for understanding the passage from a literary perspective. But that's my Bible study template in a nutshell. If you have any questions, feel free to get a hold of me by leaving a comment down below